In this section, we're going to talk briefly about what exactly is accounting and identify the two main groups of stakeholders who are the users of accounting information. So first, let's define what is accounting. Accounting is a process of identifying, measuring, and communicating economic information, and the reason why we do it is to permit an informed judgment and to facilitate decisions by legitimate users of that information. That's a definition from the American Accounting Association, and it's pretty similar to the definitions of accounting that come out of many accounting organisations around the world. Let's pick up on the main points there. The first is that it is a process, and that process has a number of parts. Those are identifying, measuring, and communicating. So the question is, what are we identifying, measuring, and communicating? And the answer to that is it's economic information, which almost universally will be in the form of financial transactions, which are recorded and stored and reported upon. Now, we have an overwhelming requirement in this environment, and that is that the information will be useful for the stakeholders who will use it to make decisions, and those decisions almost always focus around the process of allocating scarce resources. That's to say, will we allocate our money into this business, and if so, how will we use that money? Will we use it on this project or on that project? There are numbers of ways and numbers of groups of stakeholders. We all use the information differently, but the information comes to us in a valid and known format. So let's look at who uses them and why they use them. As I said earlier, there are two branches of accounting that we'll look at in this course. The first is financial accounting, which is the provision of accounting information to people or stakeholders who are outside the organisation. The second is management accounting, which is the provision of accounting information to people who are inside the organisation and who, being inside the organisation, will use that information to understand about their past performance and to manage and control and direct their future performance. In being different and in having internal and external focuses, you'll understand that the information contained in each of these sets of reports is also entirely different. When we look at management accounting, you will learn that the information is very much more detailed, that it's much more extensive, and the issue of confidentiality does not apply here because these are people inside the organisation and therefore they do have access to this confidential information. There's a lot of confidential financial information which is reported in management accounting reports, which you will never see in financial accounting reports, and that's simply because the people who access financial accounting reports are external to the organisation. So more about these users of the accounting information, and there's an extended list of the sorts of people in each group. The internal ones, mainly management. Occasionally the owner of a small business will be one of those internal users as well. But notice also when we look under external users, the first group of people there, owners and shareholders, are external. So if you happen to be a shareholder in a company, let's say Woolworths or BHP, you won't have access to the management reports. You will have access to the financial reports. Okay, so not all owners, only owners of small businesses will have access to the management reports. That's probably because the owner is the manager as well. Look at the list of external users. It's quite instructive, isn't it? A lot of information about businesses and non-business organisations is very important to external parties. So there you can see a few of them. Customers, those of us who actually receive the goods and services. Communities and governments have a stake in this, don't they? Governments care because they want the entities that run businesses to be stable and sustainable and ethical. Communities care because the businesses are located in their midst. Providers, suppliers of goods. Well, if you're supplying goods to an organisation, one thing you want to be very certain about is that you're going to be paid. And other things you want to be certain about is that they'll be using your goods for ethical purposes. The next one, employees. Employees, of course, want to know what their organisation is doing. They want to know if their organisation is sustainable. From a completely understandable selfish point of view, they want to know if that organisation is likely to be in business next week, next month, next year. And if they conclude that it's not, then they'll probably be looking for a different job. They also want to be proud of that organisation, so they want to know that it's behaving ethically and in a sustainable manner. And of course the general public, for the same reason. These organisations are important to all of us because they are embedded in our community, and the two-way links that we have with these organisations are very extensive. What uses do we make of accounting information? Well, managers need financial information so that they can fulfil their duties. So these are internal users. Managers have stewardship of other people's money, and they have to make sure that they use that money in an appropriate fashion. They will use the information for planning purposes, so forecasting what's going to happen with the business, what resources they'll need in the future, and you'll be doing that, by the way, in Assignment 1. Once you've made a forecast or a budget, then it's good business practice to look back later in the time period and see whether you actually achieved what you said you were going to achieve. And we call that control. It's a control loop. When we compare what we actually did with what we planned to do, we learn something. And so the planning and control loop is crucially important for managing a business. And of course it's used, as always, for decision making.